Mathew Labyorteaux is the kind of talent that you're either born with or you're not. It's a God-given talent, and it was given to this little boy with a sweet face that you want to love.
He had the ability, the same as Laura, to touch you. And he could do that. I mean, I think Mike wanted a boy to be part of it, so it gave the show a roundness, that it wasn't always Pa and the daughter, that he could play scenes with the boy.
Is he gonna make it?
I'd say so. Doc said it'd take some time. I think he made him strong enough to beat it.
I hope so.
Michael felt like Matt was really his son, that there was some identification there. And of course, I just adored him. I just thought he was a great kid.
Albert, when this many people live in such a very small house, well, if one person is deliberately messy, then everyone suffers.
But I like it that way.
I'd done quite a bit of work before Little House, so it wasn't my first show. I think if it had been the first television show or acting role that I had done, it might have been a little more intimidating, just because Michael Landon was Michael Landon in Bonanza and Little House. And Little House, I was coming on to the third year of it, and it was already such an enormous hit. And I remember watching Little House and being a fan of it before I was ever on the show. I first came to appear in Little House, actually playing a different character than most people know me as, which is Albert, the son of Michael Landon. I actually played Michael Landon as a little boy in flashbacks to his childhood. His father's taken ill and he takes a train and goes back to check on his father and his mother, and on the train ride he sort of reminisces about childhood.
Tickets, please.
Michael wrote another show called I Remember, which was another sort of flashback to Pa Ingalls' childhood, but it was where Mom met Pa.
Hello, Charles.
This is Henry. And Eliza Ann.
Hi.
And,
Caroline.
Carolyn.
Hello, Charles.
It was just a really, again, just a sweet, tender, great episode with, you know, the two kids having, you know, a crush on each other and meeting for the first time, and you see what they eventually would become and have the girls and start Little House on the Prairie.
Thank you very much. Charles Ingalls.
The transition for me was when he wrote the part of Albert, the character of Albert, that was not in the books. It was an added character because Michael wanted to have a son on the show.
How's that look, mister?
You're right, boy. That's the best shine I've ever had. Here's a dime for you.
Hey, thanks, mister.
You're welcome, son.
Albert was the result of a very personal tragedy for Michael and his family. They had very, very close friends, the Muscatels, Eleanor and Ray, and their firstborn sons, his name was Albert. And on the evening of the screening, I believe it was the screening of The Lord is My Shepherd, someone came running in. There was some sort of an emergency phone call, and I remember the Muscatels leaving and Michael and his wife Lynn leaving, and apparently Albert, who was about 18 or 19 at the time, had been riding home in the evening on his bicycle and been hit by a car and killed. And as a tribute to Albert Muscatel, Michael created the character of Albert Ingalls.
Now you can't do that, sir. I've got money on it.
They asked me if I would just transition into that role, and I, of course, was so thrilled and so excited I couldn't believe that he asked. So it wasn't a real nervous, gut-wrenching audition process. I had already worked with the crew and worked with Michael, and it was just a great, easy, natural transition. When I think about Melissa Gilbert, it's interesting because we grew up together. So On one hand, it was someone that I was an actor with, and it was about going to work and doing a job and going home. And on the other hand, it was someone not only that I grew up with, but someone who was my sister for a good portion of my life.
You knocked my dime down the hole. Hey!
Matt was a welcome part of the group from the get-go, and he instantly was my brother as far as I was concerned.
That fella gave me 10 cents. Nobody ever gave me 10 cents before.
I remember when my character was first introduced, when the Ingalls moved from Walnut Grove into the new town, and I was the kid living on the street underneath the stairs in the town.
That's for your own good. The sooner we get to your place, the sooner you're going to get it over with.
This is my place.
What?
This is where I live.
One of the really fun episodes that I remember filming was an episode called The Halloween Dream. And we're getting ready for a Halloween party, and I fall asleep and had this crazy dream about Indians and the cavalry, and we come in and save the day, and it's this real wild and wacky episode. The thing that I just remember loving about it was that even though we grew up on Little House on the Prairie, and it was covered wagons and horses, and we rarely, if ever, got to ride horses just because of the insurance factor, and a kid falls off a horse and breaks an arm, you can't have that happening. So it was really sort of the rare episode that we got to be on a horse and ride horses, and my brother Patrick and I owned a couple of horses, so we grew up riding, and I just loved being on horses.
Darn feathers are itching me to death.
It must have been 150 degrees in the shade, and the costumes, this wasn't a particularly great memory of the costumes, but the costume were made an Indian outfit for Melissa and I, but they lined it with this phony, it was like a leather, but it was lined with rubber. So basically we were wearing a rubber suit in the 120-degree heat for an entire episode. I think it was, 7 days, 10 days. We probably both lost about 20 pounds.
Sorry I got you into all this. It wasn't your fault, Laura. Yes, it was. I'm the one who talked you into wearing that silly outfit.
I think Men Will Be Boys was such a funny episode and just fun to watch.
Fellas, sleepy-eyed? That away.
What's funnier than watching two fathers who are trying to teach a kid a lesson and really, hammer home a point that you're still just kids. And it turns out that they completely reverse the roles on him. Everything that could possibly go wrong happens to Pa and Jonathan, and it couldn't have gone better for the kids. And any lesson that they were trying to teach them gets completely lost because they go through it with flying colors, and the adults are the ones that wind up, just having a lousy time and sort of getting a lesson taught to them.
How much money did you bring?
For what?
For the bed and the food. How much money did you bring? You did bring money.
Being able to work with my brother, Pat, on the show was a blast. Obviously because it was just very convenient, being able to get up in the morning and get in the same car and drive to the same set and not be on two different shows. But yeah, it was just great being able to hang out with my big brother.
All we have to do is make it look good. Albert, we made a deal, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, come on.
We did a couple of football episodes with Merlin that were just a blast just because we got to dress up and play football all day long.
Are you ready now? Go!
I happen to be a huge Rams fan, and when I first met Merlin, obviously I was kind of awestruck just because here's this, Hall of Fame football player, and I was just so starstruck around. It was interesting. I think I was more starstruck around Merlin than I was around Michael, if you can believe it, just because of the sports, the football aspect of Merlin.
There ain't no way we're going to be able to run over Big Luke, leastways not with just one play left.
It was fascinating to watch Matt Labyorteaux on the screen, off the screen. He had such a vulnerability.
It seemed like I got paid to cry for a living on this show. That's pretty much what my character did all the time.
That's a pretty incredible quality for a boy. Because, you know, boys are, they don't cry. They don't cry. And for him to be able to access that kind of just a wide open emotion constantly was remarkable.
At one time, he and my daughter were going together, so I mean, I got to see him in a totally different side of Matt. And of course, watching the brothers work together, he and Pat was fascinating to me as well.
I gotta admit, when I look back at some of my favorite episodes, a lot of them were the silly, fun, crazy episodes that we got to laugh, and it wasn't just so emotional and really gut-wrenching. There was an episode called The Lake Kezia Monster that was another fun, crazy episode where they were trying to steal the land from an old woman.
There's nothing much we can do about it, love.
Maybe there is, Kezia. Maybe we can scare him off the property.
Laura and I come up with this crazy costume that makes them believe that the lake's inhabited by a monster, by a huge fire-breathing sea monster.
Oh, Lord! Oh, it's no use! Oh, stop! Oh, run, children! Run for your lives! Oh, my God!
There was another episode called The Werewolf of Walnut Grove where there was a school bully, and Laura, in order to teach the kid a lesson and scare him into not being a bully and picking on some of the kids, Laura paints me up as a werewolf.
Let me see.
I pretend that it's the secret of the Ingalls family, and I lift this huge papier-mâché rock. It makes me look like incredibly strong.
Albert, what are you doing with that paper rock you made?
Werewolf of Walnut Grove was really, I was a teenage werewolf, Michael poking fun at himself, which, he did so often on the show.
Can't you take a joke?
Yeah, well, you might as well turn your light out. You're not going to get any work done staring off into space like that.
There were so many episodes that were just so tender and honest and sincere. And there was an episode called Dearest Albert where Albert has a pen pal with a girl, and he sort of fantasizes, he makes himself to be a little taller and a little more athletic, and he sort of creates this perfect image that he writes down to this girl of who he wants her to think he is. And all the while, she's doing the same thing with Albert.
I, too, am very tall and very athletic. I captain the basketball team at our school.
This won't take but a minute.
I remember the moment that the scene where we finally met, and it was this huge secret that she's been keeping, and it was just so heartbreaking, this little girl.
Paul, that's her. That's Leslie.
And it was just such a tender, heartbreaking scene where I finally realized that I'm not who I said I was, and she's not who she said she was. And we finally just accept each other on who we are without any pretense and all the stuff that we've been making up.
It's all right. Taught me a good lesson. From now on, I'm going to be honest about myself.
So many of the episodes that Michael wrote were about my character, about the character of Albert. And some of them, I remember May We Make Them Proud, where the blind school burns down and Mary's baby dies and Alice Garvey dies.
Charles, why are you arguing with me? Could it be because there's a grain of truth in what she's thinking?
Fagin, where Albert runs away, because he doesn't feel that he's part of the family, feels misplaced. And there was another episode where my real father who abandoned me comes back, and as a way of, he basically just wants to use me as a farmhand. He just needs someone to help on the farm. And I pretended I was blind so he would see me as this useless kid that couldn't help him, so he dumps me yet again.
I got nothing to offer you, boy. You stay with the Ingalls.
And then there's the Ingalls family welcoming me back with open arms into their home, and I was officially adopted and became his son on the show. Sylvia, the episode where the young local girl is raped by one of the townsmen, and she's Albert's girlfriend, and everyone thinks that perhaps it was Albert that raped her.
No. 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 I never.
Talk about a heavy show, but it just so well done and so handled, so it's such a sensitive, touchy subject that was handled so well.
He's not lying, Doc.
I was doing another television series during the final year of Little House, so my character came back for one episode with the morphine addiction.
Don't you lie to me, Albert.
Lie to you about what?
About the morphine.
And then the second episode that I came back for was when Albert, it turned out that Albert has leukemia, and he never officially died in the episode, and I think maybe it's kind of left up in the air to debate, but for the most part, he died at the end. You didn't see him dying, but it was sort of an unspoken thing that we knew he was going to die. I think it's a really interesting and just a really wonderful thing that people don't relate to me as that I was on a show. They relate to me as that I was a childhood friend.
Seems to me you've been doing a lot of dreaming lately.
Everybody wished that their father was like Pa, like Michael Landon, or they wished that their sister was like Laura, or they wished that their brother was like Albert. And I don't think I've met anyone that, if they were fans of the show or even watched the show, that it wasn't just a profoundly positive memory and experience for them during their childhood. When I think back on how the show ended, at the time I was doing another television series. It was difficult just as an actor having to compete with Little House on the Prairie. How are you ever going to do that? And you know, after Little House was all done, just about every show that I worked on from that point forward, I mean, how can you help but compare it to Little House and how Little House ran and how much fun it was and how much of a joy it was to go to work and how wonderful Michael Landon was to work with. No other show was ever going to be Little House on the Prairie again.